All right, so today we're diving deep into this whole accepting but not agreeing thing, especially in relationships. I think we've all heard that phrase before, but what does it actually mean? Like, really mean? You
Yeah.
know? And is it just another way of saying agree to disagree?
Well, it definitely goes deeper than just agreeing to disagree. Accepting but not agreeing isn't about changing your own opinions at all or even pretending to like something you don't. It's more about, well, it's about understanding and respecting your partner's perspective even when it's totally different from yours.
Okay, so let me see if I'm getting this. Like, I can still think pineapple on pizza is, well, just wrong, but I can still respect my partner's unique taste.
Exactly. That's a perfect example. And the source material, accepting but not agreeing, actually makes a really interesting point. It says that disagreements are basically guaranteed in any relationship. You and your partner are two different people, right? You come from different backgrounds, different families, you have different life experiences. It's natural that you won't always see eye to eye on everything.
That's true. I, I guess maybe it's not about avoiding those disagreements completely, but more about how we handle them. And I think that's where the psychology of it all comes in, right?
Mhm.
You mentioned we'd be talking about Carl Rogers and his theory of uh, was it a kind of conditional positive regard.
Yeah, that's right. Carl Rogers believed that for a relationship to really work, there needs to be this foundation of acceptance. An unconditional positive regard. That's the term he used. Basically, it means valuing your partner for exactly who they are, even with their opinions or flaws. You're creating a safe space for them so they can just be themselves without feeling judged.
Oh, so it's like they can talk about anything without being afraid of you, I don't know, criticizing them or something.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's not just tolerating your partner's, little quirks. It's more like really appreciating them for the unique person they are.
Yes, that's it. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they say or do either. It's more about acknowledging they have a right to their own perspective, even if it's different from yours.
That makes sense. It's about respecting their individuality while still maintaining your own.
Yeah. And that kind of leads us into another idea from accepting but not agreeing. It's called a nonviolent communication. It's basically a way of expressing your needs and feelings during disagreements respectfully instead of, blaming or attacking them.
Hmm. So instead of saying like you're wrong, it's more like I feel hurt when you don't seem to listen.
You got it. It's about shifting away from winning the argument to understanding each other better.
Okay, I'm following you. So where does the sociology fit in with all this? You mentioned we'd be talking about symbolic interactionism. What is that anyway?
So, symbolic interactionism is about how people create shared meaning in relationships, even when they see things differently. We do this with symbols, gestures, words, all sorts of little ways we interact.
Huh.
The source material actually has this great example. Imagine a couple where one partner is a minimalist and the other's like a total collector, right? They obviously have very different views on possessions, but they can still find ways to create a shared meaning around their home and the things in it.
So they could like have specific areas for the collector's things or something.
Exactly. Or they could find creative ways to display them so it works for both of them. It's about compromise and respect, really.
Okay. So it's like they're speaking different languages, but they're finding a way to translate for each other.
That's a great way to put it. And by doing that, they're actually, they're understanding each other more and their bond is actually getting stronger. They're not erasing their differences. They're finding a way to make those differences work for them rather than against them.
I'm really starting to get how this accepting but not agreeing thing isn't just some, vague idea.
Yeah.
It actually seems pretty useful.
It is. And it's something you can start practicing like right now in your own life.
So we've talked about the theory, but how does all this accepting but not agreeing stuff actually work in, real life? I mean, respecting different opinions, sure, but what about when those differences are like huge EE?
Yeah, that's the real test, right? Like we were saying before, disagreements often come from really deep values and beliefs, things like religion, politics, even how you want to raise kids. Those can be really tough to compromise on.
Oh, yeah. Those can definitely lead to some heated discussions, even with the people you love most.
Exactly. But imagine this, instead of trying to convince the other person they're wrong or just avoiding the topic altogether, what if you approached it with more curiosity? Like you could say something like, I know we see things differently on this, and I'd really love to understand why it's so important to you.
Hmm. So instead of changing their mind, it's more about understanding where they're coming from.
Yeah. And when you really listen with an open mind, you might find some common ground you didn't expect. Maybe underneath those different viewpoints, you both care about fairness, or helping others, or making the world a better place. You might want to do it differently, but you both want the same outcome.
That's a good point.
Mm.
It's not about winning the argument. It's about, well, finding that connection that brings you closer.
Right. And this whole accepting but not agreeing thing, it's not just for big, philosophical debates either. Remember our minimalist and collector couple from before?
Oh yeah, they're a classic example.
That's how this plays out in everyday life, right? Instead of fighting about clutter or needing things to be just so, they could get creative. Maybe they agree on certain areas for the collections, or they find cool ways to store things so it works for both of them.
That's actually, that's a really good idea. It's turning a potential fight into something they can do together.
Exactly. It's remembering those differences aren't bad for the relationship. They're just, well, part of what makes it interesting.
Okay, I'm with you so far. But what about when you just can't seem to, I don't know, get on board with your partner's view? Like you're really trying, but you just don't get it.
That happens. It's normal to not understand everything your partner thinks or feels, even if you love them a lot. Remember, accepting doesn't mean you suddenly agree with everything. It just means respecting they have a right to their perspective.
So what do you do when you just can't see eye to eye, even after trying all this other stuff?
Well, sometimes the best thing is to just acknowledge the difference and agree to disagree. You could say, hey, I hear you and I get why this is important to you, even if I don't feel the same way. Maybe we can just let this one be and focus on the things we do agree on.
That's a good reminder that it's okay to have different opinions. It doesn't mean the relationship is doomed, right?
Not at all. It just means you're two different people, which is, well, kind of the whole point of being in a relationship, isn't it? You bring different things to the table.
True. So active listening, I statements, knowing when to agree to disagree, those are all great. But is there ever a time when this accepting thing might not be the best idea? Like, are there downsides we should be aware of?
That's a smart question. It's super important to remember accepting but not agreeing doesn't mean you put up with bad behavior. It's not about tolerating things that hurt you or go against your values.
So it's about finding that balance between respecting your partner and respecting yourself.
Exactly. And sometimes accepting but not agreeing just isn't the right approach at all.
Like when?
Well, for example, if your partner is doing something that's harmful or dangerous to themselves or to someone else, that's not something you just accept. You have to prioritize safety and well-being, yours and everyone else's. In those situations, you got to set boundaries and maybe even seek professional help.
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't about letting people walk all over you.
Right. And it's not about being a doormat either, just agreeing with everything to avoid conflict. It's about finding a way through those differences while staying true to yourself.
Okay, so being true to yourself while respecting your partner.
Yeah, and even with the best communication, sometimes you just won't find a compromise that works perfectly for both people. And that's okay.
So then what? Do you just give up and accept you'll always disagree on those things?
Not necessarily. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is agree to disagree, but also create boundaries around those specific issues. Like, if you have totally different spending habits, maybe you keep separate bank accounts. Or if a certain topic always leads to arguments, you just agree not to talk about it.
Makes sense. Be realistic about those differences and manage them so they don't cause a bunch of resentment.
Exactly. A healthy relationship isn't about being identical twins, it's about being compatible. You complement each other, balance each other out, but you share the important values, even if you disagree on some of the details.
This has been really eye-opening. I feel like I have a much better grasp on how to handle those times when, things get a little complicated with my partner.
I'm glad to hear that.
But before we wrap up, I'm curious, what about the long-term effects of all this? How does accepting but not agreeing actually help a relationship get stronger over time?
Oh, that's where it gets really interesting. And that's exactly what we'll dig into next. We'll see how this whole approach can lead to deeper intimacy, better communication, and even help both of you grow as individuals. Stay with us.
All right, so we're back, and I'm really excited to hear about these long-term benefits you mentioned. You said accepting but not agreeing can actually help a relationship get stronger. I gotta admit, that's kind of hard to wrap my head around.
It might seem counterintuitive, but it's true. Embracing those differences, that's often the key to a really fulfilling, lasting relationship.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the secret? How does that work?
One of the most powerful things it does is, well, it fosters genuine intimacy. And I'm not just talking about physical stuff here. I'm talking about that deep, soulful connection where you feel like your partner truly sees you, gets you, understands you at the deepest level.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty amazing. But how does simply accepting lead to that kind of connection?
Well, think back to what we were discussing earlier about Carl Rogers' idea of unconditional positive regard. When you create that safe space for your partner to just be themselves, flaws and all, you're basically saying, I love you for who you are, not for who I wish you were.
That's a really powerful message. It's like giving them permission to be themselves no matter what.
Exactly. And when both people in the relationship feel that level of acceptance, it creates a foundation of trust and security that allows for real intimacy to develop. They're more likely to open up, share those vulnerable parts of themselves, express their deepest thoughts and feelings without worrying about being judged or rejected.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like you're building a bridge across those differences instead of letting them become a barrier.
Exactly. And it's not just about intimacy either. Accepting, but not agreeing, can also improve communication in the relationship. When you're not constantly trying to change the other person's mind, you're much more likely to really listen with an open heart and an open mind. You start to see things from their perspective, even if you don't totally agree.
So instead of arguing, you're actually having a conversation.
That's the idea. It's not about one person winning and the other one losing. It's about finding a way through those differences together and actually using them to strengthen the relationship.
I'm really starting to see how powerful this can be. It's not just about avoiding conflict. It's about building something deeper and more meaningful.
Exactly. And here's another great thing. This approach can even help both of you grow as individuals.
Yeah.
When you're exposed to different perspectives and ways of thinking, it challenges your own assumptions and beliefs. It pushes you to grow and evolve.
It's like having a built-in personal growth coach right there in your relationship.
That's a great way to put it. And that journey of growth can be so enriching, both for each person and for the relationship as a whole. It keeps things interesting, exciting, and full of potential.
This has been such an amazing deep dive. I feel like I have a totally new understanding of what it really means to have a healthy and fulfilling relationship. It's not about finding someone who agrees with you about everything. It's about finding someone who accepts you for who you are, imperfections and all.
You said it. And it's about being that person for your partner, too, offering them that same level of acceptance and understanding.
So true love isn't about finding a perfect match. It's about choosing to love someone, even with all their quirks.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And when we embrace that truth, it opens us up to so much more love, connection, and growth.
Well, this has been incredibly inspiring. I feel like I have a whole new set of tools for building stronger, more fulfilling relationships. Thanks so much for sharing your insights with us today.
It's been a pleasure being here.
And to all our listeners, thanks for joining us on this amazing journey. We hope you've gained some valuable tools and insights that you can use in your own lives. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep